My guardians invited me to a big family dinner but told me, "You're not mature enough to sit with the adults, so you'll be at the kids' table." I didn't make a scene, I just quietly left. Hours later, they were begging me to come back. I, 24M, never thought a family dinner would be the moment everything changed, but here we are. Let me start from the beginning because this whole mess needs context to make sense. My parents died in a car accident when I was 8. My uncle David and his wife Sarah took me in, and I've lived with them ever since. They had 2 kids of their own, Emma, who's now 22, and Jake, who's 19. For 16 years, they raised me alongside their biological children, and I genuinely believed I was part of their family. I should mention that I'm not exactly struggling in life. I graduated with a computer science degree 2 years ago and landed a software engineering job at a tech startup. The pay is good, really good. I've been living at home to save money, contributing to household expenses, and helping out with family costs whenever needed. Last year alone, I probably contributed close to $15,000 to various family expenses, vacations, and emergencies. The dinner invitation came on a Tuesday. Sarah approached me in the kitchen while I was making coffee before work. She seemed excited about hosting a big family gathering for her father's 70th birthday. Extended family would be coming from 3 different states, including her siblings, their spouses, and children. She explained how they were planning this elaborate celebration with catered food and decorations. I offered to help with costs immediately. The catering alone was going to run them several $1,000s, and I knew money had been tight since David's hours got cut at the manufacturing plant. Sarah seemed relieved when I suggested covering the catering bill entirely. We talked about the guest list, the menu, and logistics. Everything felt normal. The week leading up to the dinner, I helped with preparations. I picked up decorations, coordinated with the caterers, and even took a day off work to help set up tables and chairs in their backyard. Emma and Jake were both coming home from college for the weekend. The whole family seemed genuinely excited. Saturday arrived, and I spent the morning helping with final preparations. The caterers arrived at noon, and extended family started showing up around 2. I greeted everyone, caught up with cousins I hadn't seen in months, and felt genuinely happy to be part of this celebration. Around 4, as we were getting ready to sit down for dinner, Sarah pulled me aside. Her expression had shifted to something I couldn't quite read. She explained that they had been thinking about the seating arrangements, and with so many adults present, space was limited at the main tables. Then came the words that still echo in my head. She told me I wasn't mature enough to sit with the adults, so I would be at the kids' table. She gestured toward a small folding table they had set up near the back of the yard, where her sister's children, ages 6, 9, and 12, were already seated. I stood there for a moment, processing what she had just said. The kids' table. At 24 years old. After paying for the entire meal. After 16 years of being part of this family. I looked around the yard. Emma and Jake were both seated at the main adult table, laughing with their cousins. Emma is 2 years younger than me. Jake is 5 years younger. But somehow, I was the one not mature enough for adult conversation. Sarah was still talking, explaining how the kids would love having me there, how I was so good with children. Her voice sounded distant as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't about space or logistics. This was about hierarchy, and I had just learned exactly where I stood in their family structure. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I simply told Sarah I understood and walked back toward the house. She called after me, asking where I was going, but I just said I needed to grab something from my room. Upstairs, I sat on my bed for about 10 minutes, staring at the wall. 16 years of believing I belonged somewhere, and it took one moment to realize I had been fooling myself. I wasn't their son. I wasn't Emma and Jake's brother. I was the charity case they had taken in, and when it mattered, when extended family was watching, they needed to make sure everyone understood the distinction. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone. Walking back downstairs, I could hear laughter and conversation flowing from the backyard. Through the kitchen window, I could see everyone seated and enjoying the meal I had paid for. The kids at the small table were eating quietly, occasionally looking around at the adult tables with obvious longing. I walked out the front door and drove away. My phone started buzzing around 6. First Sarah, then David, then Emma. I let them all go to voicemail. I drove to a coffee shop across town and sat there, trying to process everything. The messages kept coming. Sarah's first voicemail was casual, asking where I had gone and when I was coming back. The second one, an hour later, sounded more concerned. She mentioned that people were asking about me and that it was rude to leave during a family celebration. David's message was more direct. He wanted to know what my problem was and why I was being dramatic. He reminded me that Sarah had worked hard on this dinner and I was being disrespectful by disappearing. Emma's message surprised me. She sounded genuinely confused and asked if I was okay. She mentioned that the whole dinner felt weird without me there and that she didn't understand why I had left. I didn't respond to any of them. Sunday morning brought more calls. I was staying at a hotel, having decided I needed space to think. Sarah called 3 times before leaving a message. Her tone had shifted completely. She sounded worried and kept asking me to just come home so we could talk. David's Sunday message was different too. Gone was the irritation from the day before. He sounded almost panicked, asking me to call him back immediately. He said they were all worried and that whatever was wrong, we could fix it. I finally listened to all the messages around noon. There were 12 total. The progression was interesting, starting with mild annoyance, moving through concern, and ending with what sounded like genuine panic. Emma had called twice more. In her second message, she mentioned that several family members had been asking about me all evening after I left. Apparently, Sarah's sister had made some comment about how rude it was for someone to just disappear from a family gathering, especially after everyone had traveled so far. But the most telling message came from Jake. He rarely called me, and when he did, it was usually to ask for money or help with something. This message was different. He sounded uncomfortable as he explained that after I left, several relatives had started asking questions about the seating arrangements. Specifically, they wanted to know why Emma and Jake were at the adult table while I was placed with the small children. Jake mentioned that Sarah's brother had made a particularly pointed comment about how strange it seemed, given that I was the oldest of the 3 kids and had apparently paid for the entire dinner. The conversation had gotten awkward, and Sarah had spent most of the evening making excuses and deflecting questions. I realized then that my quiet exit had accomplished something I never intended. By not making a scene, by not arguing or explaining, I had created a situation where my absence spoke louder than any confrontation could have. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove back to the house to collect some things. I had decided to find my own apartment, and I needed clothes and personal items. I timed it for when everyone would be at work or school. The house felt different as I packed. Pictures on the walls that had once made me feel included now seemed to highlight the distinction. Family photos where I was present, but somehow separate. Holiday pictures where the positioning subtly reinforced who belonged and who was grateful to be included. I was loading boxes into my car when David's truck pulled into the driveway. He had apparently taken the day off work. He approached me with an expression I had never seen before, something between desperation and fear. He asked what I was doing, and I explained that I was moving out. He immediately started talking about how we could work through whatever was bothering me, how family disagreements were normal, how I was overreacting to a simple misunderstanding. I let him talk for a few minutes before asking him a direct question. I wanted to know if he genuinely believed that seating me at the kids' table, while Emma and Jake sat with the adults, was appropriate. I asked him to imagine how he would feel if someone had done that to him at 24 years old. The silence that followed was telling. David struggled to find words, eventually settling on explanations about limited space and complicated family dynamics. He insisted it wasn't personal and that I was reading too much into a practical decision. I asked him why Emma and Jake hadn't been placed at the kids' table if space was such an issue. Why was I, the oldest and the one who had paid for the meal, the obvious choice for demotion? David's response revealed everything. He talked about how Emma and Jake were his biological children, how extended family expected to see them at the adult table, how it would have been weird to put them with the little kids. He said this without seeming to realize what he was admitting. I thanked him for his honesty and continued loading my car. The next few days brought an escalation in contact attempts. Sarah showed up at my hotel Tuesday evening, crying and begging me to come home. She kept insisting that I was family, that they loved me, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I asked her the same question I had asked David. If the situation were reversed, if she had been placed at the kids' table while others her age sat with the adults, how would she have felt? Sarah's answer was different from David's, but equally revealing. She talked about how I was more mature than Emma and Jake, how I was better with children, how they had thought I would enjoy sitting with the younger kids. She painted it as a compliment rather than a demotion. When I pointed out that being more mature should have earned me a place at the adult table, not the kids' table, she became flustered. Her explanations grew more convoluted, and eventually, she broke down completely. Through her tears, Sarah admitted that several family members had called her after the dinner. Her sister had been particularly harsh, questioning how they could treat their son that way. Sarah's brother had apparently made comments about the family dynamics that had left her feeling defensive and embarrassed. But the real catalyst for her desperation became clear when she mentioned finances. With me gone, they were facing the reality of their financial situation. My monthly contributions had been covering more than I realized. The mortgage payment was due, and without my help, they were going to struggle. Wednesday brought a family intervention of sorts. Emma and Jake both showed up at my hotel, having somehow convinced the front desk to give them my room number. Emma was genuinely upset, insisting that she had never thought of me as anything other than her brother. Jake was more direct, admitting that the whole dinner situation had been messed up and that he felt bad about it. Emma's perspective was interesting. She explained that she had always assumed I chose to help the family financially because I wanted to, not because I felt obligated. She had never considered that there might be an imbalance in how I was treated versus how she and Jake were treated. Jake's admission was more telling. He acknowledged that he had always known there was a difference in how I was treated, but he had assumed I was okay with it. He mentioned specific instances over the years where I had been excluded from certain family decisions or conversations, things he had noticed but never questioned. Their visit helped me understand that the dinner incident wasn't an isolated event. It was simply the most obvious example of a pattern that had existed for years. I had been so grateful to have a family that I had accepted a lesser position within it without even realizing what was happening. Thursday brought the most desperate attempt yet. David and Sarah both showed up at my hotel room, along with Sarah's father, the man whose birthday had started this whole situation. They had apparently told him everything, and he was furious with his daughter. Sarah's father was a straightforward man who didn't mince words. He told me that he had been asking questions since Saturday night, trying to understand why I had been seated with his young grandchildren. When he learned that I had paid for the entire dinner, he had been appalled. He explained that he had raised Sarah to treat everyone with respect and dignity, and that what she had done was inexcusable. He had apparently spent the last few days lecturing her about family values and basic human decency. David and Sarah both apologized profusely. They acknowledged that they had made a terrible mistake and begged me to give them another chance. Sarah's father supported their apology, but made it clear that he expected them to do better going forward. The conversation lasted for hours. We talked about patterns of behavior, about unconscious biases, about the difference between being grateful for a home and being treated as an equal family member. It was painful but necessary. By Friday, I had made my decision. I would maintain a relationship with the family, but I would not be moving back home. The apartment I had found was perfect for my needs, and the independence felt right. More importantly, I had realized that I needed to establish boundaries that protected my dignity and self-respect. The family has been working to rebuild trust since then. Sarah and David have both made genuine efforts to examine their behavior and make changes. Emma and Jake have been more conscious about including me in family decisions and conversations. The financial dynamic has changed completely. I still help when there are genuine emergencies, but I'm no longer subsidizing their daily expenses. They've had to make adjustments to their lifestyle, but they're managing. Sarah's father has become an unexpected ally. He checks in with me regularly and has made it clear to his daughter that he's watching how I'm treated. His support has meant more to me than I expected. The most significant change has been in how I view myself within the family structure. I'm no longer the grateful charity case who accepts whatever treatment is offered. I'm a family member who deserves respect and dignity, and I'm willing to enforce those boundaries. Looking back, I realized that my quiet exit from that dinner accomplished something that years of arguments never could have. It forced everyone to confront the reality of how I was being treated and to face the consequences of their choices. The kids' table incident wasn't really about seating arrangements. It was about respect, dignity, and belonging. By refusing to accept treatment that diminished my worth, I forced a conversation that needed to happen. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't anger or confrontation. Sometimes it's simply refusing to participate in your own diminishment. Walking away quietly can speak louder than any argument, and the silence that follows can force people to hear truths they've been avoiding. The family dinners are different now. When we gather, there's a consciousness about inclusion and respect that wasn't there before. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And most importantly, I know that I have the strength to walk away again if necessary. That knowledge has changed everything. I'm no longer afraid of losing my place in the family because I've learned that a place earned through gratitude and maintained through diminished expectations isn't worth keeping. Real family doesn't require you to accept less than you deserve. The revenge wasn't planned, but it was complete. By simply refusing to accept unacceptable treatment, I forced everyone to face the reality of their behavior and its consequences. Sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to participate in your own mistreatment.